Today's lesson is a short tutorial on how to score a game of bowling. I know this isn't exactly a math standard or anything that it comes from the book or anything in terms of what we're going to work on in algebra, but we always do in the eighth grade we do a unit where the eighth graders get to go bowling, and so during that week I usually like to show the students how they do score a game of bowling. I think it's something they could figure out, and I'd like them to know that their number isn't just the score they get isn't just like a magic number that just kind of randomly appears. Because I know bowling, scoring a game of bowling, it does seem a little different because you get bonus pins sometimes, and the score seems it can be higher than 100, but you would think, well, there's only 10 pins per frame, 10 frames. Maybe the highest score you can get is 100, but no, you can get higher scores. So I know there's a few tricks to it. So I like to show them how they do get their score in bowling, so it's something they know and maybe down the road could score their own game in case they run into an alley that doesn't have automated scoring. Most do nowadays, but some still don't. So I like to show them, here's how you score a game of bowling. Just a few notes to kind of start with. You get 2 throws each frame, trying to get all 10 pins. And for scoring, what's important or the things that can make it just a little tricky is when you get all 10 pins, you get bonus pins the next time you throw. When you get all 10 pins in a frame, as the second one's saying, when you get all 10 pins in a frame, you get something we call a mark. And there's two different types of mark. There's either a strike, which is when you get all 10 pins down in one shot, or a spare where you get all 10 pins down in 2 throws or 2 shots. So we are trying obviously to get a higher score. You want to get marks because that's when you get all the pins, and then you get a bonus for those as well. And spares and strikes, as I'm kind of saying, they score just a little differently though, which is the only thing that makes scoring a game of bowling a little tricky. Other than that, everything else, you just add up how many pins you get. So let's say, for example, here's a scoring sheet, or what one might look like. The numbers up top here mean the frame that you're in. So that's like each time you get to go up and bowl. And again, you get 2 throws or 2 shots that you get to get all 10 pins with. So in frame one, you get first throw with the first box is how many pins you get in the first throw. Second box, how many pins you get in the second throw. And again, scoring a game of bowling wouldn't be too bad if there weren't marks. Like let's say in the first throw I get 6 pins, and then the second throw I get 3. So I didn't get them all, but I got 9 of them. That's what I would put down here as my running total so far. I have 9 pins down. Then I come up in the second frame. Again, I get 2 throws. Let's say I get 7 pins the first shot, and then I get 1 on the second shot. Well, then I've gotten 8 pins so far in this frame. So sometimes I even say you can put to figure out how many you've got in each frame. I put that little total up top here, and then I add that to my running total. This is kind of a running total I'm going to have here on the bottom of each frame. 8 plus 9 gives me 17. So that's what I'm going to put down here. So now I have 17 as a score so far. Let's say in the third frame I have a really bad shot. I only get 1 pin the first time, but then maybe I get 6 more the next time. So again, this means 1, then 6. So I got 7 pins total in that frame. That's my score for that frame. 7 plus 17, my running total down here. Now I have 24 so far. So again, if this was just adding bowling, or if this is all it took to score a game of bowling, well, then it wouldn't be too bad. But when you start factoring in spares and strikes, which is what I'm going to teach you about next, that's when we got to add a few different numbers together. So how is a spare scored in bowling? Well, in this case, think about a spare being the fact that you got all 10 pins down. It took 2 throws to do that. So in this case, a spare, all we do is we add in the 10 pins, the 10 pins you got, okay, or I guess you could say 10 points as well. But for bowling, you get a bonus when you get all 10 pins down. You get to that frame you're in at the moment. You get to also add a bonus, the number of pins you get on the very next throw as well. So when you're bowling, let's say you get a spare in the first frame, when you're bowling your second frame, you're actually getting pins for the first frame as well. So again, that's why we have to kind of look ahead and sometimes add. And sometimes when you go bowling, you notice that when you get a spare in a frame or get a strike in a frame, the total doesn't show up yet for that frame. Because what it's going to do is add in the bonus pins you get your next throw or two, and then calculate that and then put a total up for you because it doesn't know it yet. So sometimes if you never notice why sometimes they don't have the score up right away for a frame, it's probably because you got a mark, and then they got to add in the bonus pins you're about to get on your next throw. So again, for a spare is worth 10 pins plus the number of pins you get in your very next throw, whatever that may be. So let's look at the first frame here. In this first frame of this made-up game that I have, it says you got a 5 for the first shot And then the second shot, this is the sign for spare. That line, that dash through the box there, that diagonal dash. That means I got whatever the rest of the pins were to get all 10 down. So in this case, this means I got 5, and then I got 5 more. And so in the first frame, I got a spare. Well, then a spare, again, if this was on an automated scoring system, it wouldn't show you your score yet. It's got to wait till your very next throw. What did you do on your very next throw? You got an 8. So what happens is this spare in the first frame is worth 10 plus the very next throw 8. This first spare is worth 18 pins. So in the first frame, I should have 18 for a total so far. And that's how spares work, in case you didn't know before. Go to the second frame. In the second frame, again, I got 8 pins down, kind of like we talked about, 8 pins down the first throw. And then the second throw, this line means that I got the rest of the pins. In this case, that was 2, but it's just saying that I got the spare. So in this case, I got 8 and then a spare, so I got a spare in this frame, frame 2. A spare in the second frame, that's worth 10 pins because I got all 10 pin down, plus the very next throw. Well, my next throw wasn't very good. I only got a 1. But I get that as a bonus for the second frame. So I get, in the second frame, I get 10 plus the 1. This second frame spare is worth 11 pins. 11 plus the 18 that I had already gives me 29 now as a running total after the second frame. And again, one thing I'll see students want to do sometimes is I want to add their spare and then the number that's already in this spare. Okay, but that's not how a spare works. When you add in a spare, trying to find out how many pins a spare is worth. Again, in the second frame, you got a spare. That's what we say. And you add that very next shot, the very next throw in the next frame. That's the bonus pins that you get. So I'm going to add that. So that's why this spare is worth 11 pins. 10 in the second frame that you got, plus the very next throw. Go to the third frame. In the third frame, you got that 1 pin like we talked about. Not a very good shot to start your third frame. But you got all the other 9 pins because the spare means, or that line means you got all the rest of the pins. So again, this in the third frame, you got a spare. This means that's worth 10 pins right there. And then in the third frame, you also get to add on whatever you got in your very next throw. The very next throw, you got a 9. So this spare is worth 10 plus the 9 that you got in the next throw. The spare in the third frame is worth 19 pins. Add that 19 to your total you had so far, 29. So far, you've got 48 in the third frame. In the fourth frame, you didn't get a mark. You just got 9 pins. And again, if you just get 9 pins, that means you just add 9 to your total. So marks, again, marks are the only thing that make the scoring maybe just a little tricky. If you don't get a mark, you just add in how many pins you got down. So but that's the idea with spares. You get 10 pins plus your very next throw. Again, I understand that can be sometimes a little tricky when you're trying to score a game, but that's how those work out. Well, if spares are good, strikes must be better, because strikes mean you got all the pins down in just 1 throw. Spares mean you got all the pins down in 2 throws. Strikes means the very first shot you walked up there, got all 10 pins down. So how are strikes scored? They must be a better bonus for you. Strikes are 10 pins, again, because you got all, or 10 points, because you got all 10 pins down that frame. But you get to add in the next 2 throws. I think I've got it kind of covered up here, but you get to add in the next 2 throws when you're bowling. It doesn't mean necessarily the next 2 frames, but just the next 2 throws. The next 2 times you release the ball, and how many pins you get to add both those totals onto the 10, and that's how much the strike you got is going to be worth. So, again, I have a made-up game here up to frame number 6. So in the first frame here, first frame of this game, you got a strike. A strike is worth 10 pins, so this strike right here is worth 10 pins plus your next 2 throws. And that's how much that strike is going to be worth, and is going to add to your total. So this strike, in this case, is worth, well, and then the very next throw in the second frame, I got a 6, and then the throw after that, I got a 3. So I'm going to add both those numbers in to the 10 I already got. 10 plus 6 plus 3 gives me 19. So that strike is worth 19 pins. So that's how much I get to start off with in this case. Notice that in the previous game that we scored, we had a spare that was worth 19 pins. So sometimes strikes and spares are worth the same amount or less or more. But I guess as long as you realize how they each work, you'll see that strike can obviously work out to be a little better because you're adding 2 throws in. But notice that the scores vary. I guess that's maybe what makes strikes and spares tricky. It's not like they're always just 10 or just 20 or just 30 points. Okay, each strike and spare is worth a different amount. And as long as you just kind of are patient and see what the next throws are, you'll see what that amount is. So in this case, that first strike is worth 19. In the second frame, I got 6 pins in the first throw, 9 in the second, or sorry, 3 on the second throw, so 9 total. So that's all I got in the second frame is 9 pins, or 9 to add to my total. So 19 plus 9, well, in this case, that's just 28. 28. Third frame, back to a strike now. So again, to learn how to score a strike is worth 10 plus the next 2 throws. So on the next throw, I got an 8. And then the following throw, this says I got the spare. That doesn't mean I got 10 more pins. This just means that I got the remaining pins that were left in that frame. So this strike right here, what happens is I add 8, and then I add, well, how many pins were left in that frame? If I got down 8 the first time, there must have been 2 pins left on the deck still. So I get 10 plus 8 plus 2 is what that spare means. So 10 plus 8 plus 2 gives me 20 pins. So that's how many points I'm gonna add to my running total so far. 28 plus 20 gives me 48. So now I'm up to 48 for a total in the third frame. In the fourth frame, back to a spare. Well, what is a spare worth again? A spare is worth 10 pins because I got all 10 pins down plus my very next throw. On the next throw, I got a strike. I went up and threw and got all 10 pins down. So that's a good bonus for my spare then, because that's worth 10 plus 10 more, so this spare is worth 20. So again, notice this strike was worth 20 in the previous frame. The spare can be worth 20, so it varies. And again, that's what makes maybe the scoring a little tricky, but definitely something we can handle if we just know how it works. So this spare, as I said, was worth 20. So put that back up there. So now I have 68 in the fourth frame if I add that to my running total. In the fifth frame I got a strike. This strike is worth 10 plus the next 2 throws. Well, the next throw I got a strike, and then I have to wait for the very next throw after that. So whatever I get in the seventh frame, I'd also have to wait for to see what I would score for that strike in the fifth frame. Let's imagine here. I didn't have it up here before, but let's imagine there is a seventh frame, and let's say that first throw in the seventh frame I got a 5. We'll say. Okay. So now this strike in the fifth frame, I didn't know what it was worth for a little bit here, but now it's worth 10 plus the next throw, which was a strike again, and then it was worth 5 more than that. So in this case, it's 10 plus 10 plus 5. This strike can be worth 25. So you can see, obviously, as you keep striking and run strikes together, you can keep them adding up totals. So that if you want to score a high game of bowling, that's the way to do it. Keep getting a lot of strikes in a row, because that'll make all your strikes worth more points. So 10 plus 10 plus 5 more gives me 25. If I add 25 to 68 in this case, that gives me 93. And then from there I could keep going and scoring the game. But that's how strikes work, that's how spares work. So now we know the 2 keys, at least the 2 key marks, and how to score them in a game of bowling. So just as a little more help, I'll score one more kind of pretend game of bowling, just kind of going through, scoring the spares, scoring the strikes, seeing what each one should be worth. So we'll start here in the first frame, starting right from the beginning. The first frame is some make-believe game here. In the first frame of this make-believe game, we got a 9 for the first throw, and then we got the last pin. We got that spare. So that means this is 10 plus whatever I get on my very next throw. On the very next throw, I got a 7. So this spare in the first frame is going to be worth 17 pins. Since that's the first frame, that's all I got for my total so far, so just 17. And again, as I'm scoring along here, you can try to score with me and see if you can get the total that I'm going to get in the 9th frame there, or at least up to the 8th for sure, and then we'll see what we get for the 9th and all that, but try to make these scores along with me as we go. It's kind of your chance to see if you can get the right totals as well. In the second frame I just got 7 and then 2. I didn't get a mark. I just got 9 pins down, so that's all this frame is worth. It's worth 9 pins, or 9 points. So 17 plus 9 gives me 26 in this case. On to the third frame. Third frame, I got a strike. So that means I got 10 pins. I got all 10 pins out. I get 10 points plus the next 2 throws. Next throw, I got a 6. And then the following throw, it says I got the spare. So that means I got the remaining 4 pins. So that's what I'm going to add in is 4 for that second throw. So 10 for the strike plus 6 plus 4 is 20 total. So that's what I'm going to add for my third frame. The third frame strike is worth 20 pins. 26 plus 20 gives me 46. In the fourth frame Fourth frame, I got a spare. That means I got all 10 pins down. Well, 10 plus my next throw, I got a strike. So in this case, 10 plus 10, the spare is also worth 20 pins. So 20 plus 46 gives me 66. So up to 66 so far in the fourth frame. In the fifth frame, and so on here, we start seeing a few strikes running together now. So see if we can add these together correctly. In the fifth frame, I got a strike. A strike is worth 10 plus the next 2 throws. On the next throw, I got a strike, and the throw after that, I got a strike. So it's 10 for this first one, plus 10 for the next one, plus 10 for the next one. So I get 30 total for that frame, and that's the max you can get in a frame. And since there are 10 frames, 30 in every frame would be 300. That's how you get the max score of 300 for a bowling game. So if you throw all strikes, because every strike would be worth 30 pins then in the first 9 frames. So if I had 30 to 66, now I got 96 up to this point. In the sixth frame, like we talked about, I got that strike. I got a strike here. So strikes plus 10 plus the next 2 throws. So plus 10 more plus 6 more. So this strike is worth 26 pins. Adding 26 to my total, I'm going to get 122 so far in the sixth frame. Seventh frame, I got a strike. Strike means 10 plus the next 2 throws. So I got add 6 because that's what I got on the next one. And then that dash, that's not a spare sign, that's a dash. That means I got a 0. I didn't hit any of the pins, or I threw it in the gutter, or something bad happened, so I didn't get any more pins. So I got 6 and then I got nothing. So in this case, for this strike, I just got to add 10 plus 6 plus 0 more. So just 16 then for that for that strike in the seventh frame. 16 plus 122 gives me 138. In the eighth frame, I didn't get a mark. I just got those 6 pins, so that's all I get is 6 points for that frame. So not 120, but 140, 144 up to that point. Okay. And then in the ninth frame, I got a spare, and so again, in this spare, let's say you were up to this point in the game, and then you throw your ninth frame, you wouldn't have a score there yet because, well, I don't know what my next shot is yet, so I couldn't get a score yet. So that's actually as far as we can go in this game. The spare in the ninth frame, I have to add 10 plus the next shot. I don't know what the next shot is. So all I can say right now is I have 144 in the eighth frame, but I got a spare up in the ninth, and we'll see what we get from there. Now notice in this game and the previous examples, I never did score a 10th frame for us and show us what happens there, because the 10th frame is just a little different. I'm about to do that right now and show you how does the 10th frame work. It is scored just a little different. All the other frames score the same with strikes and spares and counting my total. But the 10th frame is just a little different. As I kind of mentioned up here, the 10th frame, you don't score spares and strikes the same way you would in all the other frames. Just in the 10th frame alone by itself, just know that all the pins you get down are worth 1 point. So you're just going to count up how many pins did you knock down in the 10th frame, and that's what the 10th frame is worth. So it works a little differently. In the 10th frame, if you get a spare at some point or a strike, you don't say, oh, 10 plus the next 2 throws. You just say, oh, I got down 10, 20, 3 pins, so you'd add 23 or whatever that might look like. So in this case, here would be 23. I got a strike, I got a strike, I got a 3. So for those strikes, they don't carry over like, oh, 10 plus the next 2. They don't do that in this frame. You just say, oh, I got 10 pins here, I got 10 pins here, and I got 3 here. So then your 10th frame, in this case, would be worth 23 pins for my score. Let's say I had 100 coming into this frame. My final score would be 123. In the 10th frame, notice there are 3 boxes because you can get 3 shots potentially. If you get a spare or a strike, you can throw up to 3 times in the 10th frame. So let's say you're like we did here in the 10th frame. Just kind of backtracking a little bit. If I throw a strike on that first throw, then I will get 2 more throws. So maybe let's say that I had strike 3 up here before, or I could have 6-1 or any combination, but I can get 3 possible throws in the 10th frame. In this, I'll go down to this one. In this 10th frame, let's say I get a 4 on the first throw, and then I get my spare. Well, then I will get 1 more additional throw here. And again, it's not like I'm adding on no 10 plus that many. Okay. In the 10th frame, I just add up how many pins I knock down, and that's what I get for a score. But I can get 3 throws in the 10th frame. So 4, then I got my spare, and then let's say I got an 8. So what I would ask you, if you're trying to figure out the 10th frame, is how many pins did you knock down in that 10th frame? Well, 4, and then the remaining 6 plus 8, so you knock down 18 pins in that frame. So that's what you would add to your score. If you had, let's say, 200 coming into that frame, then 200 plus 18, you'd have 218. So again, scoring a game of bowling, you can get spares, you can get strikes. Those you just have to keep an eye on and know how to score those, and you can figure those out. And then the 10th frame, you just count up how many pins you knock down total. Other than that, scoring a game of bowling, yeah, maybe a little tricky. And good thing there are automated machines nowadays, so you don't have to score it as often, but still is something that you should know where your score comes from. It shouldn't just be some kind of magic number.